Hi. So we're going to talk about understanding your role in the jungle and more importantly, seeing why the gold distribution in the game affects the jungle role and shapes it to be the way it is right now. And that also applies to the support, and I'll show you why. Now, in solo queue, a lot of junglers end up buying a lot of carry items. So you go full AD Jarvan, or you go full AD Vi, or you go, I don't know, full AD Lisa and things like that. And the reason why that doesn't happen in competitive play as well is because of how the goal distribution happens in the role that you play as a jungler. Now, as a jungler, your goal is to be active around the map. Imagine if you took out the jungler from the equation and it was just a 4v4, games would be extremely slow. There really would be very little happening. It would just be laning and if all laners are actually equally skilled, then really nothing would happen. So the jungler's role is to shape the pace of the game, be active around the map, and what happens is that while you're active, you're unable to get farm and build up your gold and build up items. And even if you were to not be active on the map and just farming the actual jungle camps, you would still find yourself in a gold deficit compared to the laners. Laners just get more gold from laning, and that's pretty much it, like, because they can also lane and take your jungle camps. So you have a role that can be inconsistent with how much gold you get. Any laner, their gold is not inconsistent. They farm, you get X amount of last hits, you get X amount of gold, and that takes 5-10 minutes, and you can actually create yourself a little goal and know around what time you'll be able to get certain items. It's pretty simple because you time the waves, you know how much, I'll need 6 waves to get a BF sword, things like that. That's actually not true. I don't know how many waves you need for a BF sword. So in the jungle, maybe you find yourself getting a lot of kills, maybe you find yourself taking a lot of farm, and then you get really, really strong, and then you're thinking, okay, this could be a good game to build AD, and that's true, that could be a good game to build AD or be a little bit more aggressive with your build. But take a step back and think at the position that you're in. You're playing a role that across many, many games has a high inconsistency for how much gold you get. Maybe you get a bunch of ganks and you get all the kills. Your gold is way up there. Maybe it's a slow-paced game and all you do is kind of ward up and farm and take dragons, which don't give you gold anymore. You have low gold. So you need to find a balance and bring something to the table that is not affected by gold. And that's utility, which is also able to be applied to the support role, because supports don't build damage. They don't really get that much gold compared to other people, so they have to bring utility to the table. So you got champions that have high utility and have decent base values, especially for the jungle, because obviously they need to fight early. Like, they need to be strong enough to fight, so they have really good base values. The scaling doesn't really matter, but usually it's not very good. For instance, late game Lee Sin damage is not very high. Late game Jarvan damage is pretty much non-existent, but in the early game it's great. But they still bring the utility, and that's why you see all these champions like I mentioned: Jarvan, Rek'Sai, Lee, Nunu, Rengar. All these champions have a pretty easy time bringing something to the table. Jarvan's always going to be able to engage. Lee can always give you a nice little shield, a good slow, and a nice kick. Rek'Sai's got her knock-up and her passive, which is amazing. You have Nunu with the Blood Bowl, with the peel, with the ability to have really strong objective control. Rengar with the engage. So these champions bring a lot of utility, and that's why they have so much popularity right now. And the reason why they're also building damage is because if you don't build damage, you're gonna have a difficult time providing what you are there to do, providing that utility. Like the full AD Rengar, in solo queue it works, but that's because a lot of people in solo queue are kind of stupid. If you buy a pink ward versus full AD Rengar, and obviously if he's not 20 kills into the game, so you drop a pink ward, he doesn't do anything. You can actually kill him before he even jumps someone. So just consider that one. Or like full AD Jarvan, crowd control. One crowd control ability versus a full AD jungler is going to kill him. that's where also that's where it also comes in the builds from the jungle that are very focused on cooldown reduction. All the jungle items have cooldown reduction, so that you can use your abilities more often and provide that for the utility. So even the game kind of enhances your role as a utility focused champion. And there are also tank items that bring utility. You get your Frozen Heart, the Locket, and I think our Randuins actually used to have CDR, but they actually removed that because the item was too broken. So now you find yourself thinking, okay, well, jungle has to build these items, has to play in this style. And one of the things that I actually think should not be done in a lot of situations is taking lane farm and just going up to a lane. Like, let's say you just ganked the lane and you want to push it, that's fine. You can go ahead and push that wave out and deny the opponent a little bit of CS. But let's say that you are just walking by mid lane, you're doing your Wraith Camp, and your mid laner just died. It's very early in the game, it's like level 3. So he has a really short spawn time. So by the time you get to hold the lane, he's going to be back there. You should not take that farm. You should make sure that as much of it as possible is going to your laner, because if you take all that farm that early, you're going to really put that person in a bad spot. And there are big waves built up on the map. You should not take those waves. You should be providing your ward coverage, helping your team out with engages, with objectives, and let somebody else take all that farm. But anyways, I'll talk about that later. That's just something I wanted to get out there. So let's go back to, you have to build tank. Now, obviously, that's not true. A lot of times you can build damage. I build damage a lot of the times as well. But you need to be really comfortable in the games that you do so to not die instantly. Because consider this. If you build damage, you will have a harder time providing the utility from the jungle, right? Like a full damage Lee Sin is less likely to get a crazy insect kick than a full tank, because he can die very quickly. Which means that now your team can be a little bit lackluster in utility. That's a risk you take with going that build on a utility champion. Now, let's say you say, no, I don't want to play as a utility jungler with farm. Like, I build full AD on Master Yi because I want to split push. Okay, now farm doesn't magically appear. You cannot be split pushing as Master Yi non-stop because somebody has to get out of the lane that you're going to be split pushing in. Right? The farm has to come from somewhere, and the jungle is not enough. You need to end up taking somebody else's farm. And on top of that, if you're going to be split pushing, you need to keep in mind that you have to be strong enough to 1v1 a laner. So somebody that is actually getting more gold than you has more than likely another combat summoner, aka ignite or heal, and to top things off is probably higher level than you. So it's very risky to go for that split pushing style. In solo queue it can work, but a lot of games it doesn't, just because of the nature of the champions. Like, your split pushing Yi probably won't be able to beat the top lane Jax, right? But there is hope, and it comes at the price of communication. And I say at the price because a lot of people won't be happy to actually do this for you if you want to play the kind of AD carry jungle, and that is switching up the roles. And more than likely it's gonna be with the top lane. And a good example of this actually happened in a pro game maybe 1 or 2 years ago. I believe the team was World Elite, and they ran Shaco jungle. Now Shaco brings next to nothing in the team. He's a split pushing champion who has a really awkward team fight and some objective control. It's not the best, and he's pretty weak. He needs a lot of farm, and they ran him in the jungle. Now, how how did they manage to pull this off? Like, where does the utility come from? Well, they ran top lane Malphite, and what they did was, once they took the Malphite's tower, the opposing laner's tower that Malphite was in, Malphite grouped with the team and stayed grouped. Malphite eventually just switched and became the jungler. Malphite was just running around with the team, grouping as four, and just staying as a very cohesive unit, while Shaco just took the entire lane and farmed for like 30 minutes. And then eventually Shaco got strong enough that he was able to take care of the enemy's base by himself, take objectives by himself, duel multiple people at once. So if you find yourself wanting to play this style, then just communicate with your team what your goals are, and they will have to be willing to sacrifice farm, because it's just not gonna work if you can't take lane farm. Like, you need to take lane farm to be a carry jungler. Just communicate with your team next time you're gonna go about it, and it's actually probably gonna be really successful now, and that's something that I want to experiment with because of the rise in the Skirmisher Saber. The Skirmisher Saber pretty much means that you'll probably be able to beat a lot of people in the 1v1 as a jungler if you build AD. So I like that item. I have to try it out so I can give you guys a verdict about it. If you've already experimented with it, let me know. There's some games in the LCS that actually are running the item as well. So thank you for watching, and hopefully you guys will consider this next time you play a carry jungler. So feel free to suggest any ideas for any future videos you might have, and thank you for watching.